Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors, Jones, top, another point fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, in double,
left point, long drive, safety running, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schichter by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair, and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from Kleinburg, Ontario.
And, as always, Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 119 for Friday, November 11th, 2022. If you are hoping for a podcast featuring tips on using data from your harvest to help fertilize your soil, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
Thank you, as always, for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to talk about some news as well as dive into and discuss the goings-on of 7 teams around the AHL. Both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes making a parody account on Twitter. You'll never get that time back, or probably that account back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? We actually don't have a whole lot of news nothing's really going on from a league-wide news perspective. It's been pretty quiet. We don't have any trades to discuss, any, worthwhile PTO signings, anything like that. So, Sarah, unless you have something that comes to the top of your mind here, I think we're just going to dive straight into teams.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, the AHL is doing the Hockey Fights Cancer thing, which is, that's great. Very good cause. But that's it. That's pretty much the news behind it. It's like, that's great that they're doing it. Thumbs up.
Next.
Yeah. I don't have more comments on that, really, other than good job. So, as always, we will go east to west, Atlantic to Pacific, randomly pulling teams out of a hat. Normally we do 8, so 1 is missing, and we'll let you figure that one out why. Let's start with the Springfield Thunderbirds. They went all the way to the Calder Cup finals last season, but they lost a lot of the pieces that helped them get them there. We expect them to maybe not be the, tour de force they were last year, but still be competitive. Sarah, how's that going for them?
So the Thunderbirds are currently 6th in the Atlantic Division. They're 5-4-0-2. So the whole vibe is basically like not great, but also not terrible. Could be better. Could be worse. But one of the most important things to note about Springfield is that 8 of their games so far this season have been 1-goal games. One additional loss was a 2-0 loss, with the second goal coming in the final minute on an empty net. So spiritually, that's a 1-0. That's a 1-goal game. 3 of their 4 regulation losses were by 1 goal. 3 of their 5 wins were by 1 goal. 1 came in overtime, where the tying goal came in the final 3 minutes of play. 1 was a shootout win where they had a 2-0 lead and then blew it in the final 3 minutes, allowing 2 goals, basically back-to-back. They really only had 1 truly convincing win, which was a 5-4 win over Hartford, and that involved a hat trick from Josh Levo, who, if you'll remember a couple weeks ago, I was like, I don't think he's going to be with St. Louis the whole year. I'll take that one as being right. Good me. So, they're staying competitive. They're not getting blown out. They're in a lot of close games, but they're not exactly turning in convincing wins either, which is kind of what you want to see. Like, it's great that they are pulling out wins, but you'd like to not be terrified in the final 3 minutes of a game that they're going to blow it somehow. One of the things that I don't like that I'm seeing from them is how they protect their goaltender, because they don't usually. They played in a 7-6 overtime win over Bridgeport, which, a blowout game is not necessarily great examples of anything, but it gave some pretty good looks at how they do in front of their goalie. 2 of those goals against were where the shooter was basically alone against the goalie. There were no Thunderbirds even close to being in a position to be able to block the shot, disrupt the play, anything like that. Guy just one-on-one against the goalie. 2 of them looked like they were screened. There was one that was tipped in, so you can't entirely put a whole bunch of blame on him for that. Most goaltenders, if someone's, tipping in a puck in front of you, like, good luck. There was one horrible turnover at the blue line, so that's not great either. And then there was a 1-on-3, one Bridgeport guy versus three from Springfield, which turned into a Bridgeport goal. So that was not good at all. And so I just am not super impressed by the way that they're helping their goalie out. Both of their goalies are doing good in terms of save percentage. We have a 9.23 for Joel Hofer, 9.24 for Vadim Sharenko, but they're not necessarily being helped out by the players in front of them. Hofer has 8 games played. He only has 4 wins, despite putting up pretty good numbers. If we look at their special teams, the penalty kill is fine. In fact, they're kind of doing the power kill. They lead the league with 4 shorthanded goals. 3 of them belong to Will Bitton. So it's really Will Bitton versus, the other team's power play. But the power play needs some work. It's just a 14.3% conversion rate. They're tied for 28th in the league. And this is where I want to look at a player who I'm actually pretty familiar with, and that is Martin Ferk. In his 9 games played so far with Springfield, he has 1 goal and 9 assists. So, again, similar to how we talked about Rocco Grimaldi last week, he's a point per game player, but not impressed. I feel much the same about what we're seeing from Martin Ferk. He also has 18 shots on goal over those 9 games. Being a point per game player is pretty good, but that's not what Martin Ferk is known for. He's known for his shot, and he's known for scoring goals, and he's not doing that. So I took a look back at his stats from last season when he played with the Reign. He had, in his first 9 games, so same time frame, he had 8 goals, 6 assists, and 33 shots on goal, which is more along the lines of what you're used to seeing from Martin Ferk. And knowing him, knowing that that heavy shot of his misses the net a fair amount of times or gets painfully blocked by some poor soul who decided to stand in front of it, I'm sure that his shot attempts are traditionally through the roof. He's also been a major factor on power plays throughout his career. That's kind of his specialty. 47 of his 138 career goals in the AHL have come on the man advantage. And again, we're not seeing that from him right now with Springfield. His only goal is a power play goal, but again, that's just 1 goal. So I think getting him going on the power play is going to be a big help to Springfield to bring those stats back up. It's not, I can't really pin down what's not working for him. He's getting top six minutes. He's getting power play time, but he doesn't seem to be getting the puck as much as maybe what we're used to seeing him, what we're accustomed to for him. His primary weapon is his shot. So it's kind of concerning to see that he is less active with the puck than we have seen him be throughout his career. We've talked a lot about underperformers so far over the past couple weeks on the show. And like all of those other guys, for right now, it's curious, but it's not too concerning. But the next time we talk about Springfield, if Martin Ferk isn't sitting on a whole bunch of goals, it might be time to get a little bit worried about him. So I think that my to-do list for Springfield is figure out why Martin Ferk isn't doing the thing.
And that definitely seems fair. I would be a little bit concerned too. I mean, he's always been a capable playmaker. And I'd be curious to go back and look at film and see how many of those assists are maybe rebounds where, he did the big shot and, a goalie got a pad on it, but wasn't able to control it. So that one I can't say for sure. But it is a little concerning that he only has 1 goal, but at least he's able to, turn some playmaking in there to keep the ship afloat while he's not putting the puck in the net. But let's stay in the Eastern Conference here. Let's look at another middle of the pack team, the Utica Comets. They have the fewest games played in the North Division thanks to 1 power failure and some very suspicious emergency systems that didn't come on. But they've played the fewest games in the North Division, sitting on 8 games while everyone else has at least played 10 or 11. They're still under 500 in points percentage. That thing never actually goes away. It just doesn't count for the standings anymore. Are they going to keep? Do you think we're going to see them keep sliding down the standings? Or are they going to make a rally a little bit here?
So that's a big maybe, and it's going to depend a lot on what Nico Dawes can do. Dawes and Akira Schmid have been splitting time in net. Schmid has played 4 games. Dawes has played 5. Schmid's posted slightly better numbers. He's got a 1.97 goals against average, 918 save percentage. But as always in the AHL, your success is going to depend heavily on whether or not your NHL parent team is falling apart or not. The Devils as a team are doing like shockingly good in a way that I'm kind of afraid of. But there's been an injury, of course, as always, to Mackenzie Blackwood, which is going to keep him out for 4 to 6 weeks. So they called up Akira Schmid, leaving Utica in the hands of Nico Dawes. And of course, in Thursday night's game, before we recorded this, Vitek Vanacek left the game for the Devils with an apparent injury, calling Schmid into action to play into the game. So it may not even depend on what Nico Dawes can do, because he may have to go to the NHL too. Jonathan Bernier is also in the mix for New Jersey, but he's on long-term injured reserve. He might be able to come back soon, but like no one really knows. So all of Utica's prospects really kind of come down to who do they have a goaltender? Because right now they might not have one. But more than a goalie problem, Utica has a scoring problem. They have 21 goals, which is dead last in the league, tied with the Barracuda. Even if you adjust it for the fact that they've played the fewest games in the league, they're still averaging 2.63 goals per game. If I look at the highest scoring team in the league right now, that's Bridgeport. They've got 4 goals per game. All the other teams in the division, Toronto 3.9, Rochester 3.36, like every other team in their group is above 3 goals per game. And Utica 2.63. So that's also not great. They're led in scoring by Brian Pinho, who's been mostly with Hershey throughout his career, missed most of last season with a shoulder injury. And again, if you're looking for a team to have kind of, younger players stepping up, they're not really having it. So this is one where I'd be really curious to see if the stats sort of back up what I'm seeing on the ice. But a few things are standing out to me as I watch them play. They just don't have the puck that much. And it's a cliche, but it's true. You can't score if you don't have the puck. That's sort of the point of hockey. I watched the games that they played against Rochester. There were a lot of plays being disrupted in the neutral zone. Pucks were getting dumped in that never got retrieved. Just, I don't want to go to the hard to play against cliche too, but there wasn't a whole lot of fight in the corners to get pucks back. There wasn't a lot of work to retrieve things. Even just sort of spot checking games, just sort of forwarding through them and picking random spots. Literally every time I stopped the tape, they're always in their own end. And when they get out, they're just dumping it out, or otherwise they're not really creating dangerous chances. And also they've had really slow starts. Over their past 5 games, their first shot on goal came at 12 minutes, 21 seconds in. Here's a fun one, 39 seconds in. Next game, 11 minutes, 51 seconds in. And next game after that, 42 seconds. Next game after that, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. So 2 of their games, their first shot on goal didn't come until over halfway through the first period. You had those two games where it came pretty quickly. One came a couple minutes in, still not great, but whatever. But that's kind of concerning. It makes you wonder a lot about their preparedness to compete. Are you ready from puck drop? And that's as much a player issue as it is a coaching issue. If you as the coach can't get your guys to get up for a puck drop, like what are we even doing here? So I think that there's a lot of issues they need to work out, but the scoring is really what's going to hurt them the most, regardless of who's in net. You could have whatever Vezina winner you want in net, but if you're still only scoring 2 goals a game, good luck.
Yeah, that definitely seemed like when we were talking about them earlier in some of the previews that we did, that they were not going to have the offensive depth because a lot of those kids have graduated. That's, the nature of the AHL sometimes. Although I've been hearing from, reading some Devils, rumors and stuff like that, that you might get Alexander Holtz back, which would be a huge boost to them because not only is he an offensive weapon, he's also someone who can jumpstart basically any line. You could put him with basically 2 pylons and he would find a way to put pucks in that, especially on the power play, where he can just wind up that ridiculous shot or, snipe wristers from his strong side wing side or strong winger boards. And he also is someone that they haven't had working out in New Jersey because, and I made a tweet about this the other day. It's like, Yeah, when you have offense only, young kids who haven't quite figured out the defensive details at the NHL level, and that's okay. Not everyone needs to play defense. Patrick Kane has how many cups?
Right.
Like, if you have those kind of young 22-year-old guys who have figured out the offensive part more or less, but haven't quite got the rest of the game, you can't play them in fourth line energy line minutes with no power play time.
Right.
Like if you take Alexander Ovechkin and his points per 60 and you put it down to 10 minutes a game with no power play time, he scores like 37 points a year. If Ovechkin scored 37 points a year, everyone would be losing their mind. But like when Alexander Holtz is on pace to score like 15, 20 points a year, it's like, oh, well, maybe he's just not like, no, you're not putting him in the right spots.
Right.
So either you need to play guys like him, like McMichael, like Shane Wright. You need to play guys like that. Either just commit to playing them, second line minutes, second power play unit, or send them to the AHL.
Yeah.
Because playing them 9 minutes a night is not useful. And I think that's something that the Devils need to kind of pick a lane. Pick one or pick the other, but you can't do this in the middle stuff. It's not going to work out for anyone.
Yeah.
But let's move across town here. Let's talk about the team that Utica hates a lot. I don't know if I would say more than Rochester, but certainly a lot. I do appreciate on the Utica Comets Reddit page that their downvote button is the Syracuse Crunch logo. I think that's hilarious.
They really leaned into the bit there. I like it. Yeah. So I feel like they're probably getting a good workout on that, though. But the Crunch are off to a rough start this season. They're 2-9 as of this recording. They're 6th out of 7 teams in the North Division, and their defense seems to be a pretty big reason why. They're 29th in goals against per game, and they're 26th in shots allowed per game. So what is going on with the defense?
Well, first thing I could say is it's definitely not the defensive scheme because it has not changed. It's the exact same from last year. It's the same thing the Lightning use. It's the same defensive scheme that I would say upwards of 90% of the teams in the league did. And we're going to try very quickly to explain that a little bit here. If you are on the podcast version, this might be a good time to switch to video or not. You can just listen to me try and explain this with words, but the pictures definitely help. So when the puck is low in the zone, the Syracuse Crunch play what's called a 5 tight. That means you have all 5 guys inside the dots protecting the lower area of the ice because they're trying to break up the cycle with just outnumbering the other team. And basically what you'll see is the 2 wings come below the dots to either cut the top of the to cut that pass from the corner up to the boards to the defenseman, or to cut the top of the slot off. Your weak side defender will cover the net, and then your center and other defensemen are basically just pressuring the puck carrier, taking away his time and space. And as you can see in the picture on the screen here, that's exactly what we have diagrammed out here. Your 2 wings, one is cutting off this pass to the defense and defending kind of the dot lane here. The other is covering the slot. He's a little low in this picture, but generally that's where you want to be. Your defenseman off the puck on the other side from the puck is covering the net front. He's a little low here, but he's in right around where he needs to be. Your center and other defensemen are pressuring the puck carrier. That is when the puck is low in the zone. When the puck is high in the zone, what you're going to see is a man-to-man coverage. And what that looks like is pretty simple. As you see, the puck is up here, about to be shot on net, and everyone here is paired off man-to-man. In general, your defense are covered by your wingers, and the other side's defense is covered by your wingers, and your center and 2 defensemen basically kind of interchange the rest of the forwards. But yeah, man-to-man coverage, it's a pretty simple system, and strikingly, a lot of teams use this. You'll see the majority of teams in the AHL and the NHL use if you squint at it, it's identical to the system. They might have some different wrinkles, but it's largely in place. So now man-to-man coverage for the defensive zone is fine, but all it takes is one guy to beat his check, his counterpart, and the whole thing kind of starts to come apart. When the puck carrier beats his defender, that sends a lot of chaos in the defensive zone, because then it's all right, I have to now leave the guy I'm covering to go try and pressure you, the guy with the puck. Or if it's someone off puck getting away from their mark, getting open, that's obviously not great. And we're also seeing a lot of bad habits from players in the defensive zone for the Crunch. They're, not looking over their shoulder and scanning the ice behind them. They're all watching the puck carrier. And then when the pass goes right through their lane to a guy that was standing there, they're like, oh, I didn't even see that guy. Yeah, that's not great. And that's happened quite a few times watching their games. The Crunch have also not been great in zone exits and have been sloppy in transition, making breakout passes a few times. And that's led to them getting pinned in their zone for extended time, as we've seen turnovers either like right at the blue line or just into the neutral zone. Puck is coming back in the other way. That's always a recipe for disaster. Shockingly, when something is going bad for a team, transition is almost always part of the of what's going wrong. Like, it's very rare to see a team move the puck well from their zone into the offensive zone and them be doing bad. Like, that's almost unheard of. It does happen. But the other thing too is Nick Perbix getting called up and looking like he might stick with Tampa. That's obviously not been great for the Crunch, because that's taking one of their best defenders and then pulling a replacement level defender onto the roster, which has not gone super well. The bottom of the lineup has also not done great defensively. PC Labrie, Jaden Dureau, Declan Carlisle, Ryan Jones, all have not played great in their own end. And some of it is a combination of them not looking over their shoulder, picking up guys behind them, sticking to their assignments, not getting beaten man coverage. It's a little bit of all of that. The other thing too that Syracuse has struggled with is defending the rush. It's a bit of a combination of defensemen not stepping up and defending their blue line on zone entries by opponents. So they're basically giving them time and space on the rush to enter the zone. Always a bad thing. It's forwards getting caught below the puck in transition coming out of the offensive zone. And then, they can skate as hard as they want. They're not going to catch up to the play. And that means that defenders have a harder time because they don't have back pressure to count on. And they kind of have to cede that ground a little bit. They're also, their forwards are getting beat on the forecheck and are just not providing any cover through the neutral zone to even slow down the rush the other times. Another factor here is that Syracuse is playing a rather kind of fast-paced style of play that has them trading chances a bunch. If we are going to use total shots for and allowed per game as a kind of metric for pace, which it's not a great measure, but it's not nothing. Syracuse is 10th in the AHL in that total shots per game kind of pace measurement. And it's an exciting style to watch live because it means someone's always, going up and down the ice. But it's also a kind of live by the sword, die by the sword kind of mentality. As we just talked about, they're struggling to forecheck and defend their blue line, which means when they're giving up those chances, they are, capital letters giving them up, and it's costing them. Rochester's second goal of the night from Wednesday night speaks a lot to this. It was very much you gave a rush chance up and they just smoked you. But it's something that's concerning at this point, especially as we are now into November, and you would expect a lot of these wrinkles to kind of have been ironed out. But I'm not slamming the panic button yet, but this is another one. We'll wait and see a little bit here how this comes out to look, but this needs to start making some improvements here. If it looks like Nick Perbix isn't going to come back, this might be time for their front office to be trying to find, their magic player from overseas who suddenly wants to come back, or something like that. Because I'm not thrilled with the defensive core as it stands at the bottom end. Nick Perbix really definitely didn't seem like he was as big a minutes eater or all around caliber player for them. But it's always the reminder of when you take your best defenseman or your second best defenseman and you replace them with a replacement level defenseman, that's not going to go great. So they might need to be looking to either make a trade or try and find a body that they can use to plug in there, because that's the only part of it that I'm getting closer to panicky about.
So speaking of not quite hitting the panic button yet, we have Gabriel Fortier. He finally closed out a 7-game pointless streak. He had a goal against Rochester on Wednesday, but he's only got 2 points, both goals on this season. He's a 22-year-old who posted a reasonably good season last year, and we were thinking that he could have been a breakout candidate this season, but that hasn't quite happened so far. So, Sean, what is going on with Fortier?
I think a good portion of it is bad luck, to be honest. But before Wednesday's goal, he was shooting 5.8%. That is not sustainable in a good way for him because he's a better shooter than that. Like, he's, I think, up now to like a 10% with the goal he scored, but he also hasn't got a lot of shots on net. But he's also been still contributing to, creating scoring chances. They just haven't been going in for him or his teammates. He sprung a 2-on-1 in the first period against Charlotte last Friday that Alex Lyon had to make an amazing save on. But like, should that puck go in, which it very easily could have, that's an assist for him. We're still, 3 points in 9 games is not ideal, but like, it's at least a little bit more measurable. He's also been on the line with Simon Reifers and Lucas Edmonds, which isn't necessarily bad. I like Reifers a fair amount. Edmonds is a project as a player, though. And I think, if you've been watching the Crunch a fair amount, you've seen that a bit. He has great puck skills, but the speed of the AHL has looked like a lot for him so far. And he hasn't quite found his timing in a lot of places where he hasn't been bad per se, making, just big, stupid mistakes, but like tiny little ones that have kept the puck from going in for him. I think eventually, I think he could get there in terms of being a more productive AHL player. We're talking about Edmonds now. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But putting him in minutes, on the second line with Fortier and Reifers is going to help him. But for Fortier's sake, passing and, working on a guy who's not quite up to speed definitely pulls you down a little bit. But the good news is here, I think Fortier is still going to produce. Hot and cold streaks, as we've talked about repeatedly on this show already in the season. Like, hockey is a sport with a tiny rubber bouncy disc played on the slickest surface we could find. Goofy things and cold streaks and hot streaks that don't make any sense are going to happen. Fortier is still getting good minutes. He's getting power play time, which is important because he didn't get that last year and still managed to produce. I think this is mostly a bad luck spell from everything I'm seeing on film and in the numbers. I think he will eventually come out of this and bounce back. But that is it for the Eastern Conference. We are going to take a break. After the break, we will get to Manitoba, Rockford, San Jose, and Colorado. If you're just here for the Eastern Conference and this is your jumping off point, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe if you ever listen to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media and much, much more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. When it runs some ads, pay some bills, we will be right back. Stay tuned. And we're back, and we are here to celebrate Moose Night and talk about the Manitoba Moose. After lurking in the shadow of other Central Division teams like Milwaukee and Chicago, the Moose are in position to take an advantage of a division that's a little weaker than normal. They're currently second in the Central. Sarah, how do they do it?
Aside from the magic of the cool font on the numbers on their jerseys, which is the best thing in the AHL, if you ask me, one big factor in the Moose's success is goaltender Oskari Salminen. He is a 23-year-old signed as a free agent by the Jets after spending his career to date in Finland. Last season, he led the Liga in wins with 29, saves with 1,260, minutes played with 3,194, and he was tied for first in shutouts with 9. So a pretty distinguished overseas career, comes over here, and he is basically, having no problems adapting to this level of play. He right now has a 1.93 goals against average, which places him fifth among qualified goalies in the AHL. If you're new to that stat, the AHL considers goalies qualified once they've played 120 minutes. He is first among rookie goalies in that stat. He has a .928 save percentage, which is sixth among all goalies. Qualified goalies, and then second among rookies. And he has 4 of Manitoba's 6 wins. So they're doing a lot on the back of their new goaltender that I think, he was a free agent. He wasn't in anyone's picture, but he is doing a lot of work to keep the Moose where they're at. When I watch the Moose, they're not the fastest team. They're not the heaviest. They're not the most physical, but they just do enough things right to be a threat. They feel like a pretty well-rounded team. They don't have the best power play, not the best penalty kill, but they have a solid group of veteran players to lead the way. Guys like Jansen Harkins, Mikey Asimont, Alex Limoges. They're all guys who are leading the team in scoring, and they've been around several years. They know how this league goes. They know how, what it takes to play in this league. They've got some young guys like Brad Lambert and Chaz Lucius who are still trying to find their way with the team. they're not making necessarily an immediate impact, but they're getting opportunities. And I think it'll take a little while for them to settle in, but, could also be impact players for the Moose coming down in the future. Additionally, players seem to be communicating pretty well. This early in the season, you kind of expect to see a lot of miscues, collisions, pucks going awry because no one really knows where their teammate is. But, watching the Moose, I don't really see a whole ton of those errors happening with them in the games that I watch. So something is going right on the back end for these guys to already feel pretty comfortable with each other, to make plays, and to know that your teammate has your back. The Moose do, however, have a really high note problem, though. The 2019 first-round draft pick, he's 21 years old. He's played 25 NHL games, but largely has spent his time in the AHL. Jets fans, Moose fans think of him as one of the top prospects in the system, but it's becoming clear that maybe the organization doesn't necessarily think of him in the same way. Right now, it looks like the only thing that's going to get him in the Jets lineup regularly at this point is an injury to another player, which you hope never happens, or a trade. There's just not a spot for him. His agent, Ellen Roy, the other day said, I believe it was to the Hockey News, he said he doesn't deserve a guaranteed spot in the lineup. So they're not saying, go play this kid in the NHL. But he says he deserves a shot to play a run of games to show he can do it, and that's all we're asking for. I don't think he's going backwards in terms of development yet, but definitely the frustration is setting in, and that is never a good sign. So they're not asking for a trade. They're not asking to force him into the NHL, but there's a little bit of that frustration on the player's part of, what else do you need to see from me? What else do I need to do to get my shot in the NHL? Right now, he has 4 assists in 9 games, which isn't a ton scoring-wise, but he's playing at a high level. He quarterbacks the power play. He's getting big minutes. In the games that I watch for the Moose, oftentimes he's just out there the whole power play. They double shift this kid to run that power play. But this is a dangerous spot to be in as a prospect. He's already a star in the AHL. He knows he needs more work before he can or should be an NHL regular. But it's basically the hockey equivalent of not getting a job that you applied for because you need experience doing that job before you're allowed to get hired for that job. And that's really the spot that he's in. The perception right now is that the only way he can show he deserves to stay in the NHL is to get an extended look in the NHL, but he's not going to get an extended look in the NHL because he hasn't had one to prove that he can do it yet. And so, right now I think that he's playing maybe not playing the long game, but he's being a good soldier, right? Like he's playing his best. When I watch him in games, he's not disengaged. He doesn't play with that kind of attitude that you kind of see sometimes from players who are, making it known that they're not happy to be in the AHL. So he's doing his job as a player, but you can see the fact that his agent came out and said, listen, we're not loving this. That, for an agent to come out and say that, he's trying to force something to happen, even though he says, we don't think you don't need to shove him in the NHL, but hey, don't forget about him. They want something to happen. And so I think that that's going to be something to keep an eye on, because if the Jets trade him, if the Jets call him up for some reason, that's going to have a really big impact on the Moose. And so could change their standings. It could change their future depending on where he goes.
2 quick things there. It was the Hockey News. Jacob Stoller broke that one, actually. And 2, if his agent really wanted to make something happen, you just tweet a picture of your client with a giant sword right through him. That's how you get things done as an agent.
Come on, man.
At least that's the game that I'm used to seeing play out. But I can understand why maybe he didn't need to be that dramatic. It is hard to, like, so many coaches in the NHL are so risk averse, and that's why I personally, God forbid that any team ever lets me coach it, we are going to be the most riverboat gambler group ever, because I don't think a lot of that risk aversion is merited. But what I mean by that is they don't want to play young defensemen in any role that they don't have to. I was at the Penguins Capitals game last night. The Penguins played P.O. Joseph like 9 minutes. 9. Like, yeah, I understand he still has some edges to smooth out. I don't think he's as good as Ville Heinola right now, but like, what were you hoping to gain from playing a defenseman 9 minutes? But like, that's the kind of thing. Like Mike Sullivan, famously risk averse for playing younger players. He does not like to do it. And that's most NHL coaches. So asking, NHL coaches to not do that is an uphill battle. But yeah, Ville Heinola has absolutely earned a shot on the Jets or an extended look. And it's not like they have a D-core that's, just all studs and no wonder he can't break in. Like, you could squeeze him in there somewhere for sure. But we got a lot more to talk about here with Manitoba, but that seems like a good place to leave it. Let us move on. Sarah, talk to me about Rockford.
So Rockford, two kind of unlikely players, Brett Seney, David Gust. They've combined for 11 goals and 26 points as of Thursday. They've managed to outscore Lucas Reichel, which is not something that we thought we'd ever be saying at any point this season or like potentially ever. However, is the production that we're seeing from those guys, is that sustainable?
In a word, no. Now, again, let's preface this by saying both Gust and Seney are talented. Gust has always been a good trigger man. Seney has shown to be an offensive talent in the AHL. He was near a point per game last year with the Marlies, which he always showed good signs that he could be that. But I think when we watched him in Binghamton the year before, he was done. Like, he didn't want to be there at all. He was very much what you talked about not seeing from Ville Heinola, that like, I'm frustrated, but I'm not. Like, when he was in Binghamton that year, it's like, this dude straight does not want to be here. But then he went to Toronto and looked like the player we always thought he could be in the Devils organization. But Seney is currently shooting 30%. That's not a typo. 30%. His career high for a season in shooting is 12.3. As we always aim to do here, though, we're going to look a little bit past the spreadsheet and not just the numbers, but that number right there is not sustainable. Nobody is shooting 30%. You could bring Leon Draisaitl into the AHL right now, and he doesn't shoot 30%. But let's look at what Seney's done on tape. Let's talk about some of the goals he scored. He had one goal against Iowa that was just a tap into a wide open net from a rebound. His goal against Chicago was a tip where he literally just stood in the slot completely untouched because of a defensive blown coverage. Sarah, you might remember this goal if you saw it. Yeah, just nobody even near him. Just boop, tip in. His first goal against Milwaukee was on a 2-on-1 that only happened, against Manitoba was only happened because Chisholm and Stenlund ran into each other at the Rockford's defensive zone blue line. 2-on-1 the other way, gets the pass through and has plenty of time to operate. Like, that's half his goals from the season that very much feel more like good luck than they are repeatable skill. Like, yes, tipping the puck is still a repeatable skill, but to not have to fight anyone for space in the slot is not a thing you can expect to happen to you very often. You can't expect a rebound to just get kicked to you or two guys to run into each other and force a 2-on-1. Like, those don't just happen. I still expect that he's going to get on the score sheet and get his, but not at this pace. Seney, though, I feel good things about. He's going to have a good season. He's obviously off to a great start. It's great that he's finding chemistry, but he's going to cool off a little bit. Where if he finishes the season at around a point per game, I'd say that's probably where he deserves to be. What is it? 13 points for him in 9 games? No, that's too much. At least with Seney, though, we've seen him be that kind of near point per game player in the past with a repeatable shooting percentage. We've never seen David Gust do this, not at this rate. He's shooting 17.9%, which is nearing unsustainable for very good shooters in this league. It's high, but if you're really good, you could pull that off if you were an AHL sniper like, say, Sheldon Dries. But Gust's career shooting percentage in the AHL is 11.4%, though. His previous career high, 12.1%. As we did with Seney, let's talk about what some of those have looked like, though. First goal against Chicago was a breakaway off a blown coverage. To be fair, though, nearly every breakaway comes from a blown coverage, so a little bit of a smidge there. Second goal was off a deflected breakout pass that Gust just picks up in the slot, rips past Salchenko. Like, just, here's a free puck for you in high danger scoring area. 2 of his assists that were in the Chicago game were secondary assists. Those are not usually very repeatable. The third was a primary assist, but he just kind of chips the puck up to the point in a pretty standard play. The shot from the point took a weird bounce and beat Salchenko. Fluke goal. So, and Gust's first goal from Milwaukee was from a dead angle, meaning that Askarov misplayed it. It's called a dead angle because a goalie can easily cover the net from a shot with that angle, making the shot dead from that angle. So when goals go in from like the area between the face-off circle and the goal line, that's a dead angle. A goalie should be able at any level to stop that puck. And yet somehow that one went in. That's a huge misplay by Askarov. That's 3 of his 5 goals that don't really have the most repeatable feels to them. I think there's an easy case that you can make for Gust having a career year this year with better playmakers on his flanks than he's had before. He's also getting a lot more playing time than he has in past seasons. Chicago last year, Sarah, he was like getting like 3rd, 4th line minutes, maybe power play time. Whereas here, 2nd line minutes, 1st unit power play, much better playmakers on his wings. I think we could see Gus finish close to point per game territory, but he's not going to keep this pace. He's going to cool off a little bit, but I still think he puts up a very good year.
Yeah. Also the magic of playing against your old team that didn't, re-sign you and immediately scoring a hat trick, that's not necessarily repeatable, but
always, anytime that I see an NHL game where it's like this player who played for them last season or was like a career instant bet them to score at least 1 point. Like when Claude Giroux comes back to Philly, slam the line, just pound it as hard as you can.
Yeah. I was like, of course, David Gust is going to do this. Like as someone who liked him with the Wolves, I'm glad that he's successful, but also like, did he have to? Yeah, he did have to do it. Like
every player does that. Like I don't think there's any way that Coachella Valley plays Chicago, but if they do, who's scoring in that game.
Oh, absolutely. In a heartbeat. But yeah, so good for him. I can't wait to see him do it like 11 more times this season, probably. But another player on on Rockford is Josiah Slavin. He put up 18 goals and 14 assists last year, 32 points in 49 games with Rockford. Also made his NHL debut with Chicago, played 15 games for the Hawks. This season looks a little bit different. He's got 1 point, just an assist over 9 games. So what is up with Josiah Slavin?
I mean, not to drag Josiah Slavin too much. He's not the most talented guy to begin with. Like, he's still a good hockey player, and he's made good progress, but his game is largely based on work ethic and hockey IQ. He also shot 22.2% last season, which is definitely unsustainable for most anyone. It's definitely unsustainable for him. So he was due for some bad puck luck. He also was the beneficiary last season in Rockford of a lot of time with Brett Connolly. I don't want to say that Connolly carried him on their shifts because I don't think that's necessarily true, but they had chemistry. And when you have chemistry who was as good as Brett Connolly was, that'll definitely raise, the tide of your boat there. But line mate chemistry is also a weird, fluky, and fleeting kind of thing. That's why we don't see, like we did in the olden iron days of hockey, where it's like, all right, these 3 guys are in a line, and it's like that the entire season. That never happens in hockey anymore, and especially in the AHL when, guy who's your winger next week may not even be on the team, 2 weeks from now. Right now, he's on the line with Mike Hardman, who we spent a fair amount of time with last season, and Buddy Robinson. Buddy Robinson plays a very different game than anything close to what Brett Connolly did. And he also is someone who struggled to make offense at times because he thinks much more defensive first. And that has not exactly clicked perfectly with Josiah Slavin. Slavin also not getting time on the power play. He's also going to have to work really hard if he wants to get time on the power play because those units right now look pretty stacked. On the ice, seeing him play, I don't think he's doing anything terribly different than what he did last year or wrong necessarily. It looks a lot like the same player we saw last year, but one who hasn't found a whole ton of chemistry with his line yet. He's not getting good shooting luck, which is at least a little bit to be expected given the, gratuitous amount he got last year. And I think we'll see him bounce back a little bit, but I don't think that we're going to see the pace he put on last year, especially if he's not getting power play time and he's kind of getting like 3rd line-ish minutes. Power play time drives a lot of scoring production in this league, and I don't think people give a lot of credit to how much that boosts scoring. So I think him not being able to get on that is going to hurt him this season. And it's not like he got a ton last year, but again, he had really good shooting luck, 22.2% for a guy who's not really a sniper and doesn't shoot a lot either. I think we're going to see him, get off the grind here and put some pucks in the net, but I don't think it's going to be, a 0.6 per game kind of pace like he was at last year, 0.7 per game pace. I still think he does a lot of good things. He's still a good penalty killer, which he's been getting time on. But I don't know if the production we're going to see duplicate last year, but he should get it right here. One more closing thought on the IceHogs before we move on. We were high on them coming to the season, and the only thing that's really killed them so far is the Blackhawks' health. Alex Stalock and Seth Jones getting healthy, which should be soon as they are on regular IR and not LTIR, should trigger Soderblom and Regula coming back to Rockford. Because right now, Mitchell Weeks and Dylan Wells are not the answers you are looking for. You definitely need Arvid Soderblom, or the season we had hoped for in the beginning ain't happening.
No.
All right, let us head west to the West Coast, the best coast. We will start in San Jose. I am, wearing my favorite of the San Jose Barracuda jerseys. I don't know why they decided to ditch the orange to go for like a steel, or I think their black ones look bad, but that's team nicknames in the diagonal never goes well.
No. We could do a whole show about how much I hate word marks. Like
you can do it when you're the Rangers, because literally that's all you've ever done.
Right.
Even though the Lady Liberty head is best logo, not close. But you at least have a long history of it. But the nickname one. The rest of the jersey looks nice though, which makes me sad. But we're not here to talk about Barracuda jerseys. Let's go.
That's a different show. So last season, the only redeeming part of the San Jose Barracuda was their power play. They were 9th in the AHL in raw percentage. On the flip side, last season, they had the worst penalty kill in the AHL at 74.7% in raw PK percentage. This season, they are 29th in raw power play percentage at 13.8%, but they are first in the AHL in raw penalty kill percentage at 95.5%. That is a big swing. You don't usually see that. So what is going on here?
Yeah, it is quite a thing to explain. We're going to take a quick shot at it, but at first I do want to bring up, this was such a discrepancy last season that we made a meme about it. And I'm going to try and find it here very quickly, because I, of course, had to close out of it during break because I'm just always and forever. Here we go. Got you meme. We made this meme with the 2 Barracuda cars that was their special teams last year. And amazingly, well, not amazingly, it's flipped this year, and we'll get into that. So what happened was here, for starters, they hired a whole new coaching staff. You may have heard about it. Everyone there is new, and Kyle Hagel and Louis Mass have some different ideas and execution for the special teams than Jimmy Bono and Michael Chiasson did. The other thing, too, is this entire team is almost remade in the offseason. Just on the penalty kill side, CJ Cease, William Eklund, Luke Johnson, Patrick Seeloft, Derek Pouliot, Andrew Agazzino, all playing PK time this season. They weren't on the team last year. So that's a big, you're going to see shifts when you bring in brand new personnel, brand new coaching staff. The thing that's funny, though, is the structure really hasn't changed on the penalty kill for them. They use more or less the same template that pretty much every team does. A 1-1-2 or a 1-3-4 check, the check press in the zone. That's the exact same thing they did last year, and it's what they're doing this year. So these new results, how are they happening if they're running the same schemes? Well, that's what differentiates one penalty kill from the other, because every team basically runs that similar system. But the execution and how much pressure they want to dial up and when is what separates them. The best way to kill penalties, as we've said, first of all, is not to take them. Duh. The second best way to kill penalties is to keep the opposing power play from setting up in your defensive zone. Also, kind of duh. But the Barracuda are much better at doing that this season. This season, their first forechecker is doing a much better job of forcing passes from the opponents early. The defense is doing a much better job of having poise on the blue line and breaking up zone entries than they did last year, where they were very, very bad at it. In zone last season, the CUDA ran one of the most passive penalty kills in the league. They thought that if they basically clamped down and protect the slot, that would be enough. So they sacrificed pressure on the puck carrier or to any kind of the passing lanes to focus on outnumbering the team in the high-priced real estate. I've said from the very beginning that not just the CUDA that did this, but several other teams, that this is a very stupid strategy. Giving away time and space to your opponent's best possible offensive players in the offensive zone is bad, even if it's from kind of the outside perimeter. And shockingly, it didn't go well for them. This season, the CUDA have been much more aggressive, pressuring puck carriers and knowing when to pressure, because you can't just run and chase the play around the zone the entire time. That also will get you scored on for being too spread out. We've seen Henderson have problems like that at times. But this season, if they see someone bobble a pass, pressure. They see someone, take a puck on the boards and put their back to the play, pressure. They found a very good balance of pressuring versus chasing the play, and that's worked really well for them. All of that coming together, their forecheck being better, they're knowing when to pressure, them getting on puck carriers. It looks unbelievably different and sustainably good. At least with the personnel they have right now. Things can always change when you have to bring in new guys who maybe don't do things as well. But right now, if they keep this group together, by and large, that penalty kill should stay maybe not 95% right now. It's not going to stay that good, but still be in the top of the league. On the power play side, just like with the penalty kill, the schemes are identical. Double drop zone entry play, the 1-3-1 formation, otherwise known as pretty much what every team in the league does. Shockingly, hockey schemes and tactical systems are pretty much the same across the league for things like power play, penalty kill, and defensive zone, which is weird. And they're also not very complicated. But last season, though, the CUDA definitely executed their zone entries a little smoother, I think. But that's something I think more practice will, as the team kind of gels a little bit better, we'll see a better job of. Last season, though, it felt like the CUDA did a better job with quick puck movements, getting passes across Royal Road. If you're unfamiliar with that term, Royal Road, episode 0 that we talk about in the beginning of the episode gives you a good primer on it. But very quickly, if you draw an imaginary line from the middle of the net all the way out to the blue line that cuts the offensive zone in half, you're trying to put passes across that imaginary line because that means the goalie has to move laterally. And that opens up space and keeps him from getting to be able to set right away. You saw that a lot where you would have guys on the half walls passing across Royal Road to each other. That means, defenders are moving, but goalies, most importantly, are moving. I think last season the power play did a better job for the CUDA of making those passes and looking for those passing lanes than they've done this year. They're starting to get a little bit better at it, but it's not quite there yet. Last season, too, I feel like the power play did a better job of involving the bumper and the net front guy as more than just, that's a guy who stands there for screens and tips. I feel like they used those players in a more effective fashion. I mean, Scott Reedy scored 10 power play goals last season for the CUDA in just 38 games, pretty much doing just being an elite garbage man at the front of the net. He would find soft ice the net front. He would bang home rebounds. He would tip pucks. And I don't feel like he's being utilized that effectively by the Barracuda this season on the power play so far. He has one power play goal on a tip, but he hasn't seen a lot of those kind of set plays to him down at the net front when they're open. So in summary here, penalty kill is forechecking better. They're more aggressive with pressure, but they're not chasing play. They found a good balance. The power plays had more trouble entering the zone. They're not as crisp executing puck movement. They're not using Royal Road passes as effectively or as frequently. They're not really getting passes into the slot to the bumper and the net front guy for set plays to utilize them. Big picture, I think we can see the power play return to where, maybe not where it was, but to be more effective. They also had one goal on the power play that was 1 second after the penalty expired. So it's a power play goal, but it doesn't officially count. That would put them up to 17% in raw percentage. It's still not great, but it's not as horrible as it looks. So I think we'll see the power play improve. I think we'll see the penalty kill come down just because shooting, they've had some good shooting luck from power plays. They'll still probably hang in the high to mid 80s, I think, by the end of the season, because it looks so much better. We have plenty more that we could talk about with San Jose, but I think it's a good place to leave it and move on. Let us go talk about the Mile High City, Colorado. Sarah, we didn't have very high expectations of the Eagles in our season preview. This isn't the same team that we're used to seeing. A lot of key players left in the offseason. We're about a month into the season. How is it going in Colorado? Are they making us look dumb already?
Well, so we've talked earlier in the show today about how the Central Division is weaker than usual, but the Pacific is also maybe looking a lot different than we had expected. I mean, we're not talking about Tucson today, but Tucson is somehow number 2 in the Pacific. So the division is just weird right now. There's also an absurd 10 teams in the Pacific Division. So that means there's a lot of room for movement, a lot of just moving parts. But when we look at those 10 teams, we've only got 5 of them that are above 500 right now. The Colorado Eagles are 3rd in the division by points, but they've also played the most games with 11 so far. If you sort them by points percentage, like you said, it's still never going to go away, even though it doesn't mean anything anymore. If you look at them by points percentage, they dropped to 6th. So the fact that they've played more games is kind of hiding the fact that they're not that great. And they're starting to lose players already to the NHL. Shane Bowers just got called up. He's in his 4th year pro. If he makes his NHL debut with the Avalanche, he will be the last first-round pick from 2017 to make his debut. But so he's been called up. Sampo Ranta has been called up. Martin Kaut has been called up as well, as the Avalanche kind of tinker with their bottom 6 to try to improve it. Outside of guys like that, there's not a lot of young impact players who are going to make a difference on this team, which is, of course, a consequence of the Avalanche's success over the past few years. You win a Stanley Cup, you can kind of be like, I don't care. Their top 5 scorers, 4 of them, Charles Hudon, Brad Hunt, Keaton Middleton, Jason Megna, they're all journeyman type players. They've been around forever, played for a bunch of different teams. Jean-Luc Houdy is in his 3rd pro season, yet to make his NHL debut. He's the only kind of younger guy in the top for scoring for the Eagles. So, there's just not a lot of fun happening with them. In positive terms, they are on a 3-game winning streak, starting with a 7-3 win over Ontario, which is no small feat because that was just Ontario's 2nd loss of the season. Right now, they're leading the division. And as dominant of a game as that was for Colorado, it was just equally a disaster for Ontario. So it's hard to say that the Eagles are maybe that much better when it just seems like for one night, all the wheels just fell off for the Reign. They've also won back-to-back games against Texas before they head out to the road in California this weekend, but they're at least on a good run as they head out on that trip. Goaltending isn't their problem, but it's also not great either. They have Jonas Johansson in net. I hope he gets frequent flyer mounts for how often he's been moved around recently. Over the past year, he was re-signed by Colorado, put on waivers, claimed off of waivers by Florida, where he played for both Florida and the Charlotte Checkers in the AHL. Once the season was over, he was signed in free agency by Colorado again, put on waivers, claimed off of waivers by Arizona, and then when Arizona waived him, he was reclaimed by Colorado, where he was then sent to the AHL. So that poor man I hope he has a good suitcase. Before all of that happened, he was with the Sabres organization, where notably a Sabres reporter called him the worst goalie I've seen during his career covering Buffalo, which is saying something. But he's been the better of the 2 goalies. He's got a 2.35 goals against average, 920 save percentage, but really neither of these guys are inspiring a whole ton of confidence. And looking at special teams, they're basically what I would like to call medium bad. They're not horrible. They're not great. They're just sort of there. The power play is 7th in the division, 16.7%. The PK is 8th in the division, 76.8%. I like their penalty kill in theory. It kind of reminds me of what you were talking about with San Jose, of being aggressive. They get a lot of movement. They get the players moving. They're closing off shooting lanes. They're aggressive in appropriate ways. They're forcing turnovers. They get breakaways. But they're not being aggressive in ways that are dangerous. They're not putting themselves in trouble by being a little bit more aggressive on the PK. But they're just not always getting the results that they want to be getting. So I think that those are things that could correct themselves in the future. I don't think that they're going to be this mediocre. But right now, if you ask me what I felt about Colorado, the answer is meh, because that's really all I'm seeing from them.
That's fair too. If I remember right, Eustace Noonan also has not been great again this season, despite still getting a bunch of minutes. And we said at the beginning of this year too, this needs to be a season in which, like, you can't just keep trotting the dude out there to get 898 save percentage nights from him. Like, that ain't gonna cut it anymore. You had a season where you gave us that, and we kind of let it slide. You needed to show up and do better this year. And goaltending is voodoo. Why is it that? If we could hire Mike McKenna to come on and answer AHL goalie questions for us, like in season once a month, my God, that would be great. But he said no to that because we actually can't pay him to do that. So, which is fair. I wouldn't do that for free either. But I think that's all we have for teams to cover. So let us end the show like we always do. Little start bench ship. All right, Sarah. First up, we are going to do vaguely Hershey Bear related coaches. Although the first one, maybe two of them not so vaguely Hershey Bear related. So start bench ship, Mike Stothers, Bruce Boudreau, and current Bears head coach Todd Nelson. Sarah, I will let you go first.
So this is I feel like these always just bring out the homer in me because I have to start Mike Stothers. He was also the longtime coach of the Ontario Reign. Has moved on to the Ducks now, which I feel like is probably evil, but that's okay. But great guy, got a lot out of Reign teams that weren't necessarily particularly good in those years where the Kings basically had one prospect. So did a lot with not a whole bunch. I'll bench Bruce Boudreau. I think that there's always the possibility for the Boudreau bump, but we'll bench him for now. And Todd Nelson, by default, sorry, is going to get shipped. My bad.
Yeah, this one is rough for me too because I have when I was a kid, I actually met Mike Stothers when he played for the Bears a couple times and was always the nicest dude. Which, I mean, when you're a professional athlete meeting a kid, if you are anything other than the nicest guy on earth, you're really screwing it up.
Yeah.
But hearing from other people who have interacted with him from his career, he seemed like there's no one who's yeah, Mike Stothers is a dickhead to me as a player. No one has ever said that. And that's impressive because usually you'll at least find one disgruntled Mike Commodore who, screams bloody murder at the guy. But so that makes this really difficult. I mean, all three of them have Calder Cups. All three of them had incredibly successful tenures as AHL coaches. So I think I'm going to start Bruce Boudreau just because I think he is the funnest, as an interview, as everything I've seen about him. I really, if I have to root for a team to win a Stanley Cup, it's whoever employs Bruce Boudreau once my teams are out of it. Because man, has that dude been through a lot of just heartbreak in the playoffs. But at the AHL level, I think I start Bruce Boudreau here. I cannot, in my good conscience, bench Mike Stothers. That is strictly a homer call from me. So by default, that ends up with me shipping Todd Nelson, which I don't feel good about. This is, I don't know. That's what we're going to go with. I'm not thrilled with it, though. I should have made these easier. I should have given an obvious one that we send, but whatever. Here we go. Next up, we are going third jerseys again. We have the San Diego Gulls thirds, the Chicago Wolves thirds, and the Hartford Wolfpacks thirds. I will go first. I'm starting the Hartford Wolfpacks thirds. I have campaigned for them on this show in previous years. When they're in important games, wear the Reds. The Reds are by far their better jersey, but I understand that can't be your first jersey. Because it's, red is your secondary color, blue is your primary, your Rangers team. You can't wear the Reds all the time, but they should wear they should mix them in a ridiculously high percentage of the time. And they don't. And that makes me sad because they're sweet looking jerseys. So I'm starting the Hartford Wolfpack. I am benching the San Diego Gulls. I like that jersey a lot. And I understand that it's basically a, shot for shot remake of their jerseys from the 70s or what it was. But if they would just take their current logo and slap it on the front where it says Gulls, that should be the permanent jersey. I don't know why theirs are black to begin with. I don't think of San Diego and think of, it's a black based jersey. No, that's what the color should be like. And I like that, but the Gulls thing just ruins it for me. I'm shipping the Chicago Wolves one. This was always easy for me. Those literally look like they just ripped off the ASU logo and slapped theirs on it. It's fine looking, but it does not have the original spin that I feel like makes it good. Sarah, your thoughts?
So I am starting the Gulls, despite the fact that I just earlier said that I could do a whole thing about how I don't like word marks. Something about this one just works for me. I like the colors. I like how clean it is. And they've also leaned into this as merch, I believe, as well for the Gulls, which is pretty cool that they actually are acknowledging the past of the Gulls. So I just have a sort of weird attachment to this one. So I'd start that. Bench Hartford, like that's kind of hard. Like I really like these jerseys. It's different. It's eye-catching. Minor league hockey, you want your jerseys to, grab attention. You want to make people buy them. And so I like it. Just, I only have so many choices. And all of my Wolves people are going to like fire me, but shipping the Wolves jersey, the only credit that I will give this one is that the dark jersey makes the numbers easier to read than the white jersey that I can't read the numbers on, even though I'm sitting there in person. But yeah, just not particularly inspired. They could be a lot more creative, but they weren't.
I stand by this. The Wolves need a logo remake. Keep the jersey colors, keep all that, but that logo looks like 90s clip art. I stand by that take till the end of time. Rockford got the message, so
right.
All right, last one for us. Since we made the joke last show, we figured might as well bring it full circle here. We're going Henry Cavill roles. Start bench ship Sarah, Superman, Geralt of Rivia, or Sherlock Holmes.
Obviously starting Geralt of Rivia. A, great character. B, great show. C, he freaking loves that character, man. Like, his dedication and like understanding of the character he's playing is unparalleled. So definitely starting that. Benching Superman, I feel like in general that franchise doesn't even know what they want to be doing with their movies. So the appeal for me as a person who likes to look at Henry Cavill dressed as Superman, like that's kind of it for me. Shipping Sherlock Holmes by default, just because I haven't seen him in that role. I know it exists. I haven't watched it yet. So we'll call him up later once I've watched it.
That's fair. It was surprisingly hard because I think of Henry Cavill as being in a lot, but he doesn't have I couldn't put Tudors up here.
Yeah.
Because I refuse to do that. But I'm going to obviously start Geralt of Rivia. That show is. I'm really glad someone explained it to me that it's multiple timelines in the first season, because all they had to do was just tell you or remind you that this is not the same timeline, and that would have saved everyone a ton of trouble.
Right.
But the show is Googling. Oh yeah, because my wife had seen it and told me that, and if she wouldn't have, I would not have made it through the season. She'd be like, I have no fucking idea what's happening here. Sorry, Cece, you're gonna have to edit. But he is so good in that show, and it's so well shot. And you could tell he is a huge nerd for the Witcher stuff. So he fought for things in that show because they were true to his character. I am going to bench Sherlock Holmes. I think he is a B+ Sherlock Holmes. In those movies, they're fine. Like they're fun movies. They're okay. I am shipping the entire DC. Everything they've done except for Wonder Woman 1984, and The Suicide Squad. Specifically, the one with John Cena. The other one was maybe one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But they don't know what they're doing, and they're trying so hard to catch up to Marvel, where they are in how much sprawl that there is, that they're shoving 5 pounds of movie in a 3-pound bag, and it's just a bloated bad mess. Also, I'm shipping that because there's a new Superman movie that he had to quit being Geralt of Rivia. So that's extra ship. We're not sending you to the coast. We're sending you to the SPHL. That's
that's legit. That's legit. That's a good.
That's just
how dare they?
He's good as Superman. Don't get me wrong, and he has the physical capabilities of playing basically the strongest being on Earth. He looks jacked and has the physicality to pull it off. But those movies are bad, but it's not his fault. God, Zack Snyder's such a bad director. I will die on that hill. But I think that's all we have for today. Sarah, lead us out.
That is indeed it for today's show. So thank you so much for watching and or listening. Every week I say watching. That's not, we're going to make it a word. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcasts drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found at our link tree, which is linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. If you cannot spell the Calder Farmstead, it's somewhere on the thing that you should be able to figure it out. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So you can make music for you too. Sarah, where can people find you?
Well, my name is Sarah Avampato, and you can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter for as long as it exists at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or over at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves and try not to crap on their jerseys too much. Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter for the time being, as long as it continues to exist. The FTC doesn't own it by next week. At Sean O'Brien 81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. If you follow Sean O'Brien 81 on Instagram, that is a different dude. I don't know why someone else went for that one, but they beat me to it fair and square. So you can find all of my stats work on Tableau, including the model and all the graphs and stuff, which will be up by next Monday. You have my solemn vow. I have it, I'm pretty sure I have the programming done. It's just a matter of setting up the graphs and get everything up to speed. But progress is being made. I promise, guys. I promise. And we're going to do some more fun things. So take my word for it. Good things are coming there. You can find that on my Tableau page. Easiest way to get that is bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Once again, thank you for tuning in for the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.